Never Say Never Again marks the second return of Sean Connery to the James Bond role in his 7th Bond film and his one unofficial Bond film. If you guys want to check out my reviews for all the previous Bond films, I'll have a playlist that you can click on and go check out those reviews. As well, be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't. Now let's get into this review. So Never Say Never Again is an unofficial James Bond film. It was not made by Eon Productions, but does have the return of Sean Connery. This was his second return to the James Bond role, and this movie is basically a remake of Thunderball, which was the 4th Sean Connery James Bond movie. And a lot of people hate this movie. I don't hate it. I actually think it's all right. I enjoy it for the most part. I think most of the things that it's setting out to do, it does well. Unfortunately, because it is a remake of a previous Bond movie, it's hard not to compare it to that movie. And for me, while it does most of its stuff well, it doesn't do it as well as Thunderball did, which is, for me, one of the things that hurts this movie the most. But one thing that this movie definitely has going for it is the return of Sean Connery. For a lot of people, he is the best James Bond. For me, he's my second favorite, but he is definitely great in the role, and I think he was great again in this. He looks like he wants to be there. He's having fun. He is definitely older in this movie. This one came out in 1983, and the last time we saw him as Bond was 1971. I think he was around 52 in this movie, and he is looking maybe a little too old. There are times when I guess they sort of hint that he is an older Bond. He's definitely not, at the start of this, not active like he used to be, but that's partly just because of the M in this movie isn't using the double O's. But yeah, he's older. He's like, for me, like Roger Moore in his last films, where he's still giving a good performance, but at times you just are like, maybe you're a little too old to be playing this, especially when it comes to moments when he's, being more intimate with the Bond women, and you could tell there's an age difference. It's kind of awkward to watch, but other than that, I thought he was still a lot of fun to watch. He was being Bond again. He had some funny moments with the M and Q in this movie. There are definitely some funny moments there. He's not doing as much of the action himself, but for the most part, the action in this was quite fun. There's a fun fight scene at the start of this movie in this, I don't want to say rehab, but it's same as what they had in Thunderball, where he's at this sort of like spa retreat to improve his health. There's a fun fight there. I really enjoyed the motorcycle chase sort of midway through this movie, maybe in the second half, where Bond's on the motorcycle. That whole sequence I thought was a lot of fun. And the final battle, for me, definitely not as good as the final battle in Thunderball, was fairly fun. And that's sort of what this movie is. It's fun. It does most of its stuff well, just not as well as Thunderball. The plot of this is fine. It's the same plot that Thunderball had. Spectre captures 2 nuclear warheads and is threatening to launch them if their demands aren't met, and Bond has to deal with it, find where they are, and deal with it. And it was fine. The execution in this plot was fine. Like I said, this whole movie, it's good, just not as good as Thunderball. That's how the plot was. Same plot, just not executed quite as well. Some of the parts of it feel maybe just a bit more rushed to me, which some people might like, because some people think Thunderball is kind of slow. But parts of it felt like they, for lack of better words, because you're comparing it to to the same plot of another movie, at times it feels kind of half-assed, which I don't want to say they weren't trying when they were making this. I'm sure they were. It's just harder when you have the same plot, and that one was just done better in Thunderball. So it's hard at times not to feel like that, but it worked for the movie for the most part. It's got the same Bond woman, Domino. I think Domino in this movie may have had a bit more to do than in Thunderball, and she was fine in this. Not particularly memorable, but she worked. The villain in this is once again Largo. for me, Largo was never the strongest villain of the James Bond movies, even in Thunderball. And in this one, again, he's fine. I remember Largo from Thunderball more than in Never Say Never Again, partly just because he has the eye patch. But in this, the actor I thought was doing a really good job. But it's nothing, again, particularly memorable. He was just fine for what the movie was doing. They try to set up more tension with Bond in this one than in Thunderball, at least I felt, between Bond and the villain. And I felt they were trying to do that more in this one, but it didn't work too well because like their first encounter was where they were trying to really set up more tension. It was done through like a video game where they're playing this game where if you're losing, you're going to get electric shocks in these handles that you're holding for the game, and the pain increases the more you're losing. There's money at stake. Yeah, it was kind of just like, okay, kind of weird. It felt kind of weird. You'd never seen a video game thing like that in a Bond movie before that. I don't think afterwards either. So yeah, that was like, okay, I felt like they were just trying to set up tension, but just did not do it well. The henchwoman in this is alright. Maybe for me a bit more memorable than the henchwoman in Thunderball, but maybe not for the best reasons. There were moments when I was rewatching this the other day where I was actually starting to kind of laugh at the character, because there was a moment where she was speaking in third person, and it was just like, oh, okay, I didn't remember that. It was, yeah, so there were things like that that definitely didn't work in this movie, but overall, it was fairly fun. It's not a great movie in my opinion, but it does, like I said, it does most of its stuff pretty well, and it's just, it may be better if you weren't comparing it, if I wasn't comparing it to Thunderball, but it's hard not to do that when they're pretty much the same movies. But for me, I think this movie's held up by Sean Connery. While he may be a bit too old, it was still great to see him back as James Bond. He seemed like he was having a good time. There is fun action. Like I said, I really enjoyed that motorcycle chase in this. And the final act has some decent action too. So overall, I do enjoy it. I know a lot of people hate this movie. I don't. It's not a terrible movie, not a great movie. It's an okay movie. It's fine. For me, I would give Never Say Never Again a 68%. So guys, if you have seen it, let me know what you thought about it. Maybe you do hate it. Maybe you actually really like it. Let me know what you think. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. As well, be sure to stay tuned for some more videos coming up very shortly. I'm planning on seeing Black Panther Wakanda Forever this week, so I'll have a review for that upcoming shortly. So stay tuned for that, and until my next review, take care everybody.